Good morning, everybody. It's 08:35 hours or 8:35 a.m. on the 8th of February. And today's topic that I have picked is a little off of my medical topics, but it can lead to medical issues. Um, Carbon monoxide poisoning. And before I start this, I'm going to go over some of the reasons behind this. Only because it does happen this time of year more than people think. Um, I have not been able to confirm, but last night um, I was not involved in it. I was not there. Um, but I'll just give you a gist of what happened. They had a school incident yesterday, late last night, involving what we call a mass casualty incident due to the number of patients outnumbered the number of ambulances assigned initially. It was initially came in as reported 10 people unconscious at a school. That was then reported only 3 unconscious. Now another 4 to 7 are now awake. What they found out has not been released yet. They have closed the school today. Initially, the fire department ran meters through the building, found 0 readings on their equipment. But I tell people that's not always a guarantee. One, it depends on if they open doors and stuff in the building, or windows, or anything else like that could have caused the source to drop very rapidly, and there wasn't any tracings when they arrived. So they haven't confirmed if it was a carbon monoxide poisoning or not, but I just wanted to bring this video up to those that don't always think about it. This had the perfect example of going south very quickly. One, it was a school property with a large amount of people. There was roughly 30 to 40 people in the building when this incident occurred. It was not a school sanctioned event. It was a community play group that was using it, but there were youths there involved in it. So I wanted to go over a little bit about carbon monoxide poisoning. One, you got to realize is carbon monoxide poisoning can make you sick, and it can kill you. The bad part is a lot of times the victims don't know they are suffering from it until it's too late. That's the bad part about it. You don't always realize what's going on. So some of the statistics out there, just so that you understand how large this is, approximately 400 Americans die each year from carbon monoxide poisoning. 20,000 emergency room visits per year of people going to the hospital due to symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning. Of that 20,000, 4,000 are hospitalized. When you look at numbers, that's pretty significant. So I figured I'd go over some things to hopefully better prepare you so if this would happen. One, right now, we're in the good times, but if the grid went down due to storms or whatever else, how's that going to affect you and some of the stuff to think about? So, us as preppers, what are some of the things, why preppers? And some of that is, one, we have the generators, the bad part is some people don't think, and they'll leave them where they shouldn't. They always recommend generators or anything like that should be 10 feet away from the house. Because if it's close to the house, that air could be pushed back into the residence, which could cause issues. Sometimes people cook indoors, in an emergency when they don't have electric, and they don't think about that. You got to be real careful if you're using anything combustible to try to cook with. So what are some of the combustible fuels that we would be using? Wood is just one. natural gas, gasoline, diesel, kerosene, coal, charcoal are just a few of those. And remember, all of those combustible fuels can cause carbon monoxide poisoning. So you got to realize that. Remember, the biggest issue with carbon monoxide is it's invisible, it's an odorless gas, it's tasteless. I have seen carbon monoxide numerous times. My own parents were affected by carbon monoxide poisoning. They lived in a duplex home, which is a double block home, and the neighbor's house is the one that was the source of the carbon monoxide poisoning, not my parents' house. And I try to tell people it can affect anybody. Appliances that we got to be careful of is one, your heating furnace, water heaters, especially your gas style water heaters, gas stoves, space heaters, gas dryers, charcoal grills, or any other way you're going to try to heat your home. The wood stoves, coal stoves, anything like that can be appliances that could affect that. And other places we don't think about carbon monoxide is if you're camping, depending on what the heat source is you're using in your tent. If you're using a trailer, your propane sources in the trailer can also cause carbon monoxide issues. Would be your propane refrigerators if you're running it off the propane side, or is it run off the electric? Your stoves in the trailer, stuff, the regular heating source for the trailer could be another thing. So that's things to think about. Some of the symptoms, the biggest one I can tell people is flu-like symptoms, but they don't have a fever. Could be an indicator. It could be carbon monoxide. Not saying it is, but it could be. A lot of times people get dizzy, fatigued, nausea. They may be vomiting with it. They may have a headache, irregular breathing patterns, chest pains are just some of those symptoms that people complain of. And then people affected the fastest with carbon monoxide are going to be your elderly population, your very young, like your infants, people with anemia, people with breathing issues, and chronic heart disease are just some of those people that could be affected by carbon monoxide. And what I'll do is I want to review what happened today with my parents, which is going back, I'm going to say 2004, 2005 time frame. I drove from PA to Massachusetts and back in the same day. I did a shuttle run to drop somebody off, came home, was extremely tired, went to bed, and my phone rang, and it was my mom calling. And it was crazy hour of the night, like 11, 12 at night. So I didn't answer it right away till I got to my phone. I called her back. I'm like, what's the matter? She's like, something's wrong with your dad. So I immediately said, okay, I'll be right up. I only live 10, 15 minutes away, if that. That day probably even took me half that time. I was assistant fire chief at the time in the town where I lived. So I had my radios on in the vehicle, and I didn't hear the fire department or the ambulance dispatch. And so I called my mom. I'm like, did you call the ambulance? She's like, no. I said, I want you to hang up, call 911. And she's like, well, what do I tell them? I said, you tell them everything you told me, that my dad was unconscious in a chair. Stood up from the computer, walked over to the chair, complained of a real headache, and went unresponsive. I got to my mom's house. I immediately went in, asked my mom what was going on. There's 3 people in my mom's house. My niece, who my mom was raising at the time, my mom, and my dad. My dad was the only one truly showing symptoms that was being affected. He was on the first floor, so I started questioning things. Checked my dad's vitals; they were good. And then my dad woke up, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And he said, "Oh, I just have this severe headache." So I started doing some checking. Asked my mom how she felt. My mom, when she gets nervous, gets nervous bladder syndrome and stuff. Said to my mom, I'm like, check on my niece. They yelled upstairs. She said she was okay, but about a minute or 2 later, she must have got out of bed, and I heard her collapse upstairs. That was the indicator to me immediately that it was carbon monoxide, because not knowing at that point. I immediately notified the comm center via cell phone or radio. I don't remember which one I had it in the house with me. Explained the situation, told them I have a carbon monoxide incident with victims. So I immediately told my mom and dad to get out of the house, which they were able to. I went upstairs to help my niece get downstairs, and then the police arrived. We used a blanket method, drug her out of the residence. By that time, I talked to my mom, and my mom said, they've been smelling something weird coming from the neighbor's house. We tried a phone call. We tried to bang on the door. There was no answer on the neighbor's house. We immediately, believe it or not, for those that know me, this fat guy squeezed through a coal chute door into the neighbor's house and made it to the first floor, unlocked the door. Me and the police officer made it to the second floor of the residence. She was totally out of it, would respond to us, but was making no sense. Me and the police officer were trying to extricate her from the residence when the officer said, I can't take it anymore in here. I need to get out. So he left. I stayed with the person in the stairwell. We had her down about halfway. Fire truck arrived. I yelled outside for the officer and advised them that I have a victim that we need to get out. By that time, numerous other EMS ambulances were requested. So we were able to get her out and everybody out of the houses safely. What they found was, to show you how carbon monoxide works, even in a double block house with wall separations, the source was her heating system, the pipe or something to the chimney. It was a common chimney, so they shared the chimney. About halfway up, 3/4 of the way up, they joined into one. The carbon monoxide in the basement in my mom's house was minimal. As you went further up, the first floor had 100 parts per million. By the time they got to the attic level in my parents' house, it was over 300 parts per million. The biggest thing to realize is the numbers, anything over 30 is enough to start causing major issues. Most meters will alarm at 10 to let you know there's an issue. And that's on my parents' side of the house. That is not the opposite side. The treatment at that time for them was high flow oxygen. They were all transported to the hospital. My dad was kept about 6 to 8 hours due to the carbon monoxide being on oxygen until his levels came down. My niece was only in maybe half that time. The neighbor was kept overnight, if not mistaken. But it just proves how dangerous carbon monoxide is. And you could be doing everything right, and it could be from another source that you wouldn't even suspect. Like, who would think, that the carbon monoxide would come from the neighbor's house? But it's things you got to think about, and how it travels. It's sometimes going to go up versus laying low in the house, where people sometimes think. So, I mean, being in the career I've been in, I've seen everything and anything on carbon monoxide. We've had incidents where, in the city near where I work, people cooking pigs in the basement of their buildings. It's just, they use charcoal, throw them on the floor, put the pig on it, and that's how they cook it, and they don't think about that type of stuff. But it's to make you be more prepared. I just wanted to do this quick video. I know it's long. It's almost, 17 minutes. So I'm going to get off of here. Just wanted to bring up carbon monoxide real quick. Figured it was a good topic, only because I seen it happen last night. I personally didn't see it, but I heard it last night, only because it was a school incident and it made news very quickly. So thanks for listening. Hopefully it'll help you educate yourself. If not, go out and spend $20 or whatever. Get yourself a carbon monoxide alarm. Make sure it has both battery and electric. And have at least one in your basement if that's where your heating source is. Till later, it is now 6:52 a.m. on the 8th of February. Thank you for listening. Be safe. God bless.